for a Formula One car, it does everything you wish a car could do. And maybe even then some, because I don't even think my mind could get wrapped around that a race car could do that.
Hello everyone. Now who's ready for something a little bit different? Because my guest this week is a driver who's never actually raced a Formula One car. But hear me out. He's tested one and he was very quick and he very nearly raced one. The man I'm talking about is four-time NASCAR champion and global motorsport icon, Jeff Gordon. Welcome to Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. Our listeners from across the pond will be very familiar with Jeff and his racing achievements. But for those people who need a little introduction, let's just say he was the Lewis Hamilton of NASCAR. He won 93 races, took 81 poles, and showed unbelievable longevity by starting 797 consecutive races over 23 years. He was quite simply the man in stock cars. He's now retired from driving and has more time to pursue other interests, such as his passion for F1. He's long been a fan of our sport, and he doesn't need a second invitation to talk about Formula One. He's right up to speed with what's going on in 2021. He knows many of the key players, including Lewis Hamilton, Toto Wolff, and Fernando Alonso, and he's very happy to relive that famous Williams test alongside Juan Pablo Montoya on the Indianapolis road course back in 2003. Jeff's observations on Formula One are also fascinating. The cars, the people, the format of the race weekends, all of it. And as a co-owner of Hendrick Motorsport, the Mercedes of NASCAR if you like, he's also got a keen eye on what it takes to win. And what's truly inspiring is his passion for F1 and just how close he really came to make that big leap from NASCAR to F1. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Jeff, it is such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure! When I saw this come across my my phone, I was like, absolutely. I love F1, and you know the podcast is great, and so looking forward to being part of it. Thank you.
Well, look, I think a lot of people are asking or thinking to themselves, how much of a fan of Formula One is Jeff Gordon?
Well, I mean, I'm as much of a fan that I watch every practice, every qualifying session, every race. Maybe not live. I might not get up at 3 a.m. if it's not, a time that is when I'm going to normally wake up. But I might get up a little bit early. So I've always been just a big open wheel fan. I wasn't always. NASCAR came a little bit later for me from when my early beginnings of racing. So it's always open wheel, mainly dirt and IndyCars, but also Formula One. And then, as I got older and started paying attention to more and more racing, and Formula One just became something that I was like, okay, I want to watch these events more. And I was always fascinated with qualifying. But I was typically racing, right? So I didn't watch all the races on Sundays. And then I drove the Williams BMW. And that whole experience changed my life. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what these cars, were capable of. And from that moment on, I went from being a fan to being an avid fan. I wanted to watch everything that went on at the track. And of course I wanted to follow Williams and the drivers, like Juan Pablo Montoya that I met. He drove my car, I drove his car when we did that swap in Indy. And so from that point on, I just started watching. Now I watch it, I would say religiously every weekend. So I follow it very, very much. And I'm in the broadcast world now. I'm in the team ownership world. And so anything that I could learn from Formula One, if there's something that, that they're doing, and again, qualifying, I pay a lot of attention to qualifying and the knockout rounds, I think is fascinating. And, we have done some of that in NASCAR, from a team ownership standpoint of how the teams are operating, whether it's, how they're financially bringing in, the marketing side of things, or, what are we going to have to look forward to down the road with NASCAR as far as, engineering, aerodynamics. And of course, we're never going to be anything like Formula One, but there's still a lot that can transfer over, you can learn from. And maybe if there's something, even that they can learn from us. I've got to know Toto well, and he's been fantastic to talk to at times over the years, and keep saying we're going to try to make a trip over and see their facility. I'd love to get him to our facility, but we even have at NASCAR at Hendrick Motorsports, we have some folks there that used to be in the Formula One space in engineering aerodynamics.
Well, Jeff, you've left me in no doubt that you are a genuine Formula One fan, and it's wonderful to hear. I'm interested that you're fascinated by qualifying almost more than the race from what you're saying. What is it about quali that you love so much?
Well, and I don't want to put down the races. I love the race, especially when it's wet. but I think that for me, qualifying, you just have to push to the limit of the car, right? There's no fuel savings. In the way it's set up right now, where they get that final set of softs in the final round, they can push the car to the max. So I just love seeing the drivers on the edge. There's no strategy, just go fast. Hit your marks, and let's see how it plays out. And of course, to me, it not just the drivers pushing it to the edge, but you see the true speed of the race cars typically, and and of course, when there's a good fight like there's this year between Red Bull and Mercedes, then you see a little bit more of that, or I guess it gives you the anticipation of what you're going to see on Sunday. So I don't know. I like the knockout. I like who's not going to make it into the top 10. Or 15 or 16. And so it's, I don't know. I find that, a lot of fun and great to watch. And I'll say sometimes I think it's more entertaining than the race.
It is fun to see them on the limit, isn't it? I do agree with you. Let's go back to 2003. It's actually 18 years ago this week that you were doing that swap with Juan Pablo Montoya in that Williams FW24. You said at the time, this is probably the coolest thing I've ever done. How do you reflect on it now?
Still, nothing's changed. I guess the only thing that could top it is if I drove a current Formula One car, but I don't.
Toto, if you're listening.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be happening. But I of course, I've driven a lot of different types of race cars over the years, but at that time, I'd really just been driving stock cars. And, on the high bank oval tracks, those cars pull some good load in G's, and you get a great sensation of the raw power and force that car can do. But you put that car on a flat road course like Indianapolis, and it's going to struggle, right? It's going to struggle in the braking. It's going to struggle in the cornering. So, to have the absolute comparison on the track on the same day of the two cars, just was mind-boggling. Just how different it was. The braking zone. Oh my God! There on the front straightaway going into turn one. So there's 6 markers. I couldn't even get to the 6th marker in the stock car, and it was, how do I get to the 1 marker in the Formula One car, maybe even past the 1 marker. So, that's insane, that the amount of braking. The biggest issue I had was that the Hans device had just started coming into Formula One. I had it maybe a year at that time in NASCAR. And so the Hans did, those cars and cockpits are so tight, it wouldn't fit in the cockpit. So I needed it for the braking. My neck could not hold up. So I'm going down to the corner and I'm just like, I want to go so far to this corner. I want to stomp on the brakes, but my head is just going to go into the steering wheel. So I was unfortunate that I didn't feel like I get max braking because my neck just could not handle it. And then the cornering too, just unbelievable. And actually, the harder and more aggressive you drove the car. See, this is the one. Yes, of course, you look at the car, you look at the design of the car, the engineering of the car, and it should do everything right different compared to stock cars. Stock cars, not the rules limit it from doing all those things. It does an amazing job for what it is. But for a Formula One car, it does everything you wish that a car could do. And maybe even then some, because I don't even think my mind could get wrapped around that a race car could do that. And so that was, and if you ever go back on YouTube or whatever and watch that event, the first time I came in, I mean, I was literally like a kid who was 6 years old at Christmas that just got, the greatest bicycle that he, always wanted. Or had been dreaming of for the last year or two, whatever. I don't know. How do you put it in perspective? But I was just screaming because it was just, wow, unbelievable. Matter of fact, I'll show you this. I don't know if you, and I know we're not on camera here for the podcast, but I'll pull this because this is one of my pride and joys right here. So this is actually the steering wheel from that Williams BMW. Folks at Williams been great friends of ours over the years, and so. My stepfather, who kind of, he was part of my business for a long, long time. He's retired now, but he got me this for a Christmas present. So that's
Jeff. Is that the actual steering wheel?
That is this is what they said. They said, to their knowledge, Jonathan at Williams, he said, to the best of all of our knowledge of all of the records that they keep, that is the actual wheel to the car that I raced. So, and we've swapped some things back and forth over the years. I actually have a Williams full nose wing in my office that sits right next to me in my office.
Don't tell me the actual nose.
Now that's not the actual nose in the car. Still working on that, Jonathan. But no, no, this is a newer one. It's pretty cool. Actually, I will tell you this: when that nose came in, the first thing I did, I took it to our carbon shop at Hendrick, and I took it, to our engineers, and I was like, "You guys got to see this!" And it's just unbelievable the strength that it has. Of course, all the winglets and tips and all that stuff, aerodynamically are amazing. But how strong it is for how light it is just what blows my mind.
Yeah.
So that obviously that experience was just unreal and unforgettable. And I'm so glad we captured it on TV. That was a neat moment for Speed Channel back then in the U.S. and something that had never been done before.
And it was the braking more than anything else that stood out and stays in the memory now.
Yeah, I mean, some of the corners that in the stock car I was lifting out of the throttle, it was just easy flat, right? Just easy. I mean, and I've said this before. I didn't go and compete in that car to try to get maybe that last, whatever it was, second half, 2 seconds. Well, I don't know. I mean, compared to the times between me and Juan Pablo that day, we were not that far off, but I'm sure he wasn't pushing. The car wasn't in full mode. It wasn't a competition. So to push it all the way to the limit to get more out of it, I've been curious to know what it would have taken. But to just go out and drive the car, way easier than the NASCAR, way easier. You got to think about this, right? And I know there's a lot of Formula One fans out there going to hear this and just go, that's crazy. You're talking about a 4-speed manual transmission with a clutch. And the way you have to downshift that car, you go into the braking zones, you're just slipping, sliding all over the place to try to downshift. You stand on the gas, the car just wants to step sideways, and you're just basically sliding this car all around this racetrack. So it's about finesse and just keeping it within the limits, which is what every race car is all about. But for the Formula One car, it's hard to find the limit. And so, to me, at the speed I was going, it was, other than my neck, other than holding my head up, the car itself did everything for you, really, that you want to, right? You stomp on the brakes, nothing's locking up. And of course, if I went harder, I'm sure it would. And then you just, hit this paddle, bam, bam, bam. downshift, step on the gas, traction control, launches out of the corner, everything grips the way it's supposed to, and then up through the gears. So to me, it was just more about trying to understand where the car's going to, because things are just happening at such a more rapid pace. So that's the part I think that you have to do, is you change your brain around that hey, that corner's coming up much faster, so you better start turning in before you get there, because it's already there. And so I don't want to say that to discredit anything. I think Formula One has the best drivers in the world, but the two disciplines are completely different. I think it's why you don't see many people go and be successful in Formula One after being in a big heavy stock car, and I don't think you have people from NASCAR to go over to Formula One, and do that back and forth. It's just two different worlds. But the car was amazing and fun to drive, and I'm sure getting it to the limit is what makes those guys so great.
And Jeff, have you ever, in a quiet moment, imagined yourself, now I know that you're a quali fan, on a qualifying lap in that Williams BMW at Monaco?
Yeah, Monaco, not so much. Maybe some other tracks where, there's a little more forgiveness. But I mean, of course, who wouldn't want, if you got the opportunity, who wouldn't want to do that, especially when I was in my prime driving. At that time, I felt like I could drive anything and everything. I had confidence. I was winning races. And so I would have loved to have done it if I had gotten the opportunity to do it in a proper car. It would have been hard to say no to.
That's where I was leading next. Did this test at Indianapolis make you wish that you'd pursued a career in single seaters?
Well, I look at my background, and my background was not what a Formula One driver's background is and has been for long, for many, many years. And what I mean by that is in America, I grew up racing go-karts and quarter midgets on oval tracks, on dirt tracks, going around in circles that, trained me for sprint cars. And then those are going around in oval. And then I got in a midget or a sprint car on pavement, and that, was on oval. I never did any road race. I should say I did do the go-kart nationals in the US one year, finished fourth, but there was no shifting. There was no, it was, just, and we weren't in the rain or anything like that. So to me, and I think it really, I don't know if it's changed tremendously right now in the U.S. I think more kids are growing up that way and go on to NASCAR because NASCAR is so popular in the U.S. But you get outside of the U.S. and that's how kids are in go-karts on road courses, and if they're good at it, right, they go to Italy, they go to Germany, or wherever they, Japan, wherever they go. And that's how you become a Formula One driver. So that was never on my radar when I was younger to go about it that way. But yeah, of course. I mean, Formula One, it's so glamorous. It's, and I know, you talk to a lot of people in the industry, and it's very cutthroat, and it takes some of the fun out. The business side of things takes a lot of fun out of it. And then if your car's off that year, right, you almost don't even have a chance. So that those are the downsides. The upsides is you're a Formula One driver. So who wouldn't want to do that? And of course I would have loved to have done that had the right opportunity come along.
If Sir Frank Williams had offered you a ride for 2004, would you have taken it?
So, there were a lot of discussions that went on that got more serious than I thought that they would after that, because I did have so much fun with it. And I started thinking, okay, could I train my neck enough to do this? Could I learn the tracks? Could I be competitive? And to me, I thought, even myself, I thought it was too steep of a climb to accomplish. I was at a point. So I guess to your point, the opportunity somewhat did come along. I went to the Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona, and just on vacation, really just walking around. But it happened to be when the Formula One race was happening, and so we went to the race. Jimmie Johnson was actually with me, and all of a sudden, a couple people were like, "Hey, such and such would like to talk to you," and I'm over in the Jaguar, paddock, and hey, tell us about what's going on with your future. We saw you drove the Williams. It probably was more than anything, did I have any money, to bring to Formula One, and did I want to be a Formula One driver? I sat down with Frank, after that. I think he came to Indianapolis after that test for the actual race, and I went and sat down, had coffee with him, and we talked about it. And I think it might have been a similar kind of probe. So it really never got in. It never really got serious, went anywhere. And I really at that time didn't expect it to, because I was so established in NASCAR. Now 10 years or 8 years prior to that, had that happen, it would have been different. There was one other conversation, I'm gonna, Jacques Villeneuve was a part of these talks and conversations when he was was it BAR, British American Race, when that was all being formed. I think they wanted an American driver, or somehow I got on the list, and we had a lot of discussions. But the discussions were, okay, you got to test an IndyCar, and then you're going to go test. At that time, I don't know, if it's Formula 3, whatever form is in Europe, and it was. And so I think that was around 1998 or 99. So now I just won my third championship, and so things were hot, for me in NASCAR. And so when I looked at it, I was like, okay, you want me to leave? I'm with the best team, winning races, winning championships, and I'm going to have to leave this, and I'm going to have to start my career all over basically, and go learn how to be a road racer in an open wheel rear engine car. I was like, man, that's fun to talk about, but that again just doesn't seem realistic. So both of those opportunities came my way, and they were fun discussions, but never went anywhere, because I love NASCAR, and I just didn't see where that me starting over at that point was reality.
But Jeff, when you look back at your amazing career, amazing NASCAR career, and of course 3-time Daytona 500 winner, there was nothing else for you to achieve in NASCAR. And is there a tiny bit of you now that looks back and goes, kind of wish I'd gone for it?
No, I don't. I mean, I look at where my life is right now, and driving's behind me, and I'm all in with NASCAR. I love NASCAR. I think it's just a tremendous series with great talent, and I get to be a part of it, be a partner with Rick Hendrick. Calling the races is fun to me. It's almost like the perfect transition to jump out of the car and go into. So, and I still get to travel all over the world and go to beautiful places and visit Formula One races every once in a while. So I don't know. I feel like, everything's meant to happen for a reason, and my life has turned out amazing. And I don't feel like I left anything out there on the table. But it's fun. I love when I get to spend time with people like you, because it's fun to talk about.
I'm sure you'd have been a world champion. Look, last question from me on this topic is, did Mr. Bernie Ecclestone, ever get involved in the discussions? Because he was key in bringing Jacques Villeneuve over from IndyCar to Formula One in 1996.
He was involved. Yeah, I had discussions with him, and they were not long discussions, but I think there was some talks about a big interest in an American driver. There always has been, right? Before this, and still probably today. And I totally know why it hasn't really worked out. And to the reasons why I mentioned earlier, I think Alexander Rossi, is probably the one of the closest that we've seen to really have success. But just again, trying to get that American driver in a car that can compete up front would be exciting and fun for me to see. So anyway, so yes, Bernie, when I would come to the racetrack, he and I would chat real quick about it, and he's like, we got to get you a ride. We got to make it happen. What do we got to do? And I would just kind of smile and say, oh, I don't think that's going to happen.
And of course, Jimmie Johnson has made the transition from NASCAR to IndyCar this year, sticking to the road courses. But have you spoken to Jimmie? How's he finding it?
I've only spoken to him after all the testing that he had done. I haven't talked to him since he's done the races, but his expectations were it was going to be tough, and it has been. I think and of course he got in the F1 car, and he did really well in the F1 car. And I think he's seeing the differences with IndyCar to Formula One. No power steering. All the cars are basically spec cars, and how hard and aggressive you have to push that car and find the limit, and that it's very, very difficult to transition from the style you had in NASCAR. And it goes back to kind of what I was saying. You're in this big, heavy stock car, and you might go road racing, but for the most part, the type of, and a lot of it's in the braking. And I learned a little bit of this in the sports cars when it did the Rolex 24-hour, is you have to teach yourself all over again how to brake, because in a high downforce car like that, you go into the corner or into the braking zone, and you want to just get max pressure on the brake pedal as fast as you possibly can, because that's where the most downforce and the best ability to slow the car down is. And then you taper off the brake. In NASCAR, it's almost opposite. If you go max brake, it's going to wheel hop, it's going to lock tires, it's not going to do what you want it to do. So you actually set the car, you do this one like 50 to 60% of brake pressure, car sets. And once it sets, boom, now you go to 100%, and then you'll lift off of it, and maybe even trail brake it all the way into the apex. So completely different. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. That's some of the conversations that I had with Jimmie was that. Of course, he's learning all new tracks. So it's what I love about Jimmie is the fact that he's taken this challenge on. He's not getting any younger, but he had this amazing NASCAR career. And he's like, you know what? I've always wanted to not just drive, but compete in an IndyCar, and he's out there doing it. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. And I can't wait to see how he progresses, because as my teammate, he set the standard. I mean, he was a guy that the way he focused, the way he pushed the car, made you have to push harder. And so he's a quick learner. He really is. So with all the data and information he has from his teammates and what he's gathering, I'll be surprised if he doesn't progress throughout the season, or I'm pretty sure I hear he's going to do next season. But I can tell you this: the NASCAR community is counting on him because there's not been a guy that's ever done this, or not in many, many, many years that I could think of. And so, the NASCAR guys, they want to make sure that they're being represented properly.
And after 20 years in a NASCAR, how much of is it down to muscle memory in a way, just doing what you've always done, and therefore it's so hard to do it the other way?
Yeah, and I think it's about, and I just have so much respect for race car drivers and not just race car drivers, athletes in whatever their discipline is. And every common denominator, I would say 95% of the time, it's that they got introduced to it at a very young age. They started doing it, every weekend, and this became their life. And so this natural progression through the different types of cars was second nature. Just was so easy, not easy, but it just came to them because of the experience that they had already had. So that's how you become successful in anything, in my opinion. That's my the way I look at how my racing career progressed. Why I was successful is because if you had made as many laps as I had, by the time you were 10 or 15 years old, I promise you would have been really, really damn good at driving a race car. And so, I just had so many laps, and so, but all those laps were on ovals. So I excelled at ovals, and that type of racing. And that's a totally different discipline too. On an oval, the way you carry speed and momentum through the corner on this big, long corner is, and then the way you break it down, totally different than any road course that I've ever been on. So, yeah, I really do think it's these days, especially, it's harder than it's ever been to transition over from one type of car or one discipline to another.
But equally, Jeff, had you started on road courses in karting and worked your way through a single-seater ladder, I'm sure there's no one doubting that you could have won many races in Formula One. Equally, had Lewis Hamilton taken the course that you'd taken early in life, do you think Lewis could have succeeded in NASCAR?
And you just nailed it, 100%. That's what I'm saying, is that, I have enough confidence in my abilities that I feel like had I taken that path, I could have been successful. And same for Lewis Hamilton. When you have that ability and that talent to find the limit of the car and have the confidence and drive and desire to push yourself, and in every aspect, mentally, physically, and be completely dedicated to it, you're going to be successful in that discipline for sure.
And can we talk a little bit more about Lewis? Because I know you've done a few things with him over the last few years. He came to your final, well, what we thought at the time was your final NASCAR race.
It was supposed to be.
Actually, Jeff, do you know, I was there at Homestead as well in 2015, but it was a wonderful coincidence that I was there to see your last race, because I was actually
be honest. You were stalking Lewis, and you're like, "What is he doing? Going to a NASCAR race?" And you had to get the scoop.
And whilst there, I was also interviewing Gene Haas, who was coming into Formula One, of course, in 2016. But I mean, so you and Lewis go back a bit. How did you get to know him?
I'm trying to think of how our paths cross. I mean, I've seen him in New York a few times, and somehow I got his email. Either he reached out to me, or I reached out to him. I don't remember exactly how it all started, but we were just exchanging, emails, going back and forth, and I sent an invitation to him and to say, hey, my final race is coming. I think we had talked about trying to get him to a NASCAR race. So I said, hey, if you're going to come to one, this might be a pretty good one, because my final race, I had a lot of friends and family, and we made sure that it was set up right, and it was a fun and entertaining weekend. And when he accepted the invitation, I was pretty shocked, but I thought it was actually really cool, and it said a lot about Lewis. One, he likes the U.S. Two, he likes Miami. And three is, he wanted to come to a NASCAR race, and to have him there was it. So, I look at this, and on my final race, Richard Petty, Mario Andretti, and Lewis Hamilton were there for that race. I'm not saying they were all there for me, but they were there in that race, and that was just so special. What a great memory for me to close out my career. We'll say it was that day, not those other 8 races that I did the next year.
Yeah. And you've also come into contact with, several Formula One drivers, but I've been watching an interview you did with Fernando Alonso, for example. Do you see many similarities between yourself and these champions of Formula One?
I guess, when you excel and reach the highest level of a championship, there's definitely something that you have in common with those other champions. But again, it's to get there in Formula One so much different than to get there in NASCAR. But I still think it takes the same amount of effort and same type of personality. But most important, takes the team around you, right, to create that success. And from what I could tell from both Lewis and Fernando, they recognize that. They're very appreciative of getting the opportunity to show their talents. And being able to do that because of the people that put that race car on the track, or the team that called the strategy, that got them through that season. and they played their part. And that's what I would say I have in common with those guys.
What is the hardest thing about being a serial winner in any category? But I mean, you won 93 races, 81 poles, 797 consecutive races.
Well,
it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I never looked at myself as a tough Iron Man, but I do hold that record, so I'll take it. You know, I mean, I just, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember where we were going with that. What was the question?
Well, but being a serial winner
yeah,
in anything, how hard is it mentally and physically to stay up there? Because Hamilton and, Alonso's now done 300 and something Grand Prix. Hamilton's done 270. You had that amazing run of consecutive races. Just how tough is it mentally and physically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I've met plenty of drivers that, said, man, if I could just get there, if I could just get that ride and that good equipment, then, I could show what I can do. And so some people would say that's the hardest thing. Then others who have had the opportunity to get behind the wheel of a great race car would say, no, the hardest thing is to stay on top once you're there, or to maximize and keep it going. And sometimes you're at the mercy of the people, of the equipment, of the team, and then sometimes you get distracted, right? So I would say, yeah, the hardest thing for me, my career was 23 years. And when you start having a lot of success, all of a sudden now the marketing group wants to use you more for sponsorship opportunities. The fans, are more wanting some of your time. There's more media interviews. There's more expectations. And so that becomes very difficult to manage and handle all those things. And it probably took after I won like my third championship for me to have, and maybe even the fourth, I don't know. I didn't win another one after the fourth, so maybe I didn't do it right then, but to get this balance of confidence, humility, and work ethic, and also structure to my schedule, my routine, to be able to manage it properly. And listen, you always can do it better. But I feel like, the first championship, I was just overwhelmed with it. Probably should have won the second year in 96, but we came up short. Our teammate won it that year. And then we clicked off the next two. And at that time, I will say I felt like, man, everything right now is just as good as it can be. But we also won 13 races in the championship in 98. And it's like in NASCAR, that's unheard of, still is today. And so you talk about trying to maintain that. And I tried, and it was very, very difficult. Rules change, cars change, team members, get taken away from me because they want it, somebody else offers them a job. Very, very difficult to do, but it's not just on the driver. It's the whole group. And I would say the toughest years I had as an individual, as the driver, was when Jimmie Johnson came along and he started outrunning us every weekend and winning the championships. That's when I had to look within myself and go, okay, we should have the same equipment here. I believe we do, and I still have confidence in what I'm doing. So what can I work harder at? What is he doing that I'm not doing? And he was very focused in very, every area that he could learn and improve in, he was doing. So that's what I started doing. And fortunately, the success did come back. I came close to a couple more championships, didn't quite close it out, but I felt like I was doing everything I possibly could to compete at the highest level, and was pushing myself more mentally, physically. The mental part for me is and I think that's one of just everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and the mental part has always been one that has worked in my favor. I never felt like I had to go do all kinds of mental training. I'm just the type of person where you put me in at that desk where I've got to look at data, or I've got to spend time with the team getting prepped for a race. And man, I'm there. There's just boom, it all sinks in. and then I get to the racetrack and I get in the race car, and I'm just very disciplined and focused, and like nothing else comes into my mind. So I've never had to say, "Ooh, I need to hire somebody to teach my brain how to to block out distractions, or to do this or to do that." It's been something that luckily has come naturally, and I think I look at my parents, and I think that's where that came from.
And did it always remain civil between you and Jimmie Johnson?
I think for the most part, maybe there was probably a rivalry there that we kept it civil because we were teammates, and we came in as friends. I mean, I was a huge supporter of getting Jimmie there, starting a fourth team at Hendrick, and of course, I was also an equity owner in that opportunity. But Jimmie and I became great friends, and traveled all over. Like I said, he was with me. When we went to that Barcelona race, we went with a group of friends. So, I think later, when he started having tremendous amount of success, I was like, hey, wait a minute. Okay, brought you over here. I wanted to see you win some championships, but I didn't know you're going to go win 5 in a row and then go win 7. Now, hang on.
That's greedy.
Yeah. So along, at some of those times, I was, I got to this point where I was like, okay, I want to do everything I can as a driver. What do I have to do, for our team to make us better? I want to go, compete with Jimmie Johnson. And I think it was 07. I can't remember the exact year, maybe 07. I felt like we'd finally had, we were there, and we were actually ahead of him in the points at the end of the season. And then he just went on this crazy tear and won, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 races in a row or something. And he squeezed out another championship. We came up short, came in second. So, I'd say at that time, I didn't have resentment. I just wanted to get my fair share of the wins and maybe get one more championship. And so I had to go through him to try to do that. And so there were times where, we were competing, and it got fierce, and I was racing him harder than I was racing anybody else, because I felt like, well, that's the guy I got to beat today. And I think that, that can put a strain on a friendship. But I feel like we handled it well. We're still friends today. And I think it went as well as it could possibly go in that kind of scenario, and being friends at the same time.
The reason I asked that was because, of course, Hamilton and Nico Rosberg back in 2016, when Rosberg won the championship, that wasn't always plain sailing between the two of them. And Lewis has said since then that I don't think he'd let another teammate relationship deteriorate in the way that one did, because of all the negative energy, and then putting it in the context of today, I don't think he'll let his relationship with Max Verstappen, although they're different teams, deteriorate as well, because I think Lewis saw the negativity and hates the negativity. Yeah.
And so what I love about Lewis, is how he views the world, relationships, people, and just has this peace within a very volatile environment. But I never had, a relationship like that with any of my teammates. Well, I take it back, maybe one. So when I first came to Hendrick Motorsports, Ricky Rudd was really the guy dominating for the organization. And he came close to winning a championship, I think the year before I got there, maybe the year I got there, either 92, 93, something like that. And so when I came along, I don't know, for whatever reason, Ricky felt like, hey, adding a third team, this young driver, this is a distraction and taken away from my chances, or our chances as a team, to win a championship. And so he never really welcomed me in. He and I, just had kind of we just didn't really communicate a whole lot. And then he left Hendrick and started his own team. We actually, he wrecked me one time, and we had it out in the ambulance. He's not a guy you want to fight, because he's pretty good fighter. So, but we had some intense words. So I knew right then, Ricky never liked me, and we never really got along. But other than that, I would say that I never had that. Even with Jimmie, I mean, in all those moments, he and I would have a way to either have a beer after, or laugh about it, or just go to the next race and just understand, hey, this is what's happening right now. He's the guy that we've got to beat. He's a great guy, so it makes it hard to dislike him and or to get even mad at him. We might have had a few moments on the track where I want to beat him really bad, and it did or didn't happen. But that never transferred over to the relationship breaking down into a situation like what you're talking about with Lewis and Nico.
Who's the best driver you ever raced?
Well, I think, because Jimmie was in the same equipment as me, and you got to understand, throughout my whole career, I didn't think there was anybody that I couldn't beat, until Jimmie Johnson, came along. Yeah, there might be a year where Mark Martin was really strong, or Dale Earnhardt Sr., Dale Jarrett, some guys, Rusty Wallace, things like that. But Tony Stewart. When I just look at overall, one of the just most pure talents, I would say Tony Stewart. He can get in anything. He drove an IndyCar, NASCAR, sprint cars. He also did the swap with Lewis in the F1 car. He's one of the just incredible talents. Jimmie, I did a few things with him, like at the Race of Champions, where he was my teammate, and he could get out there and slide the car sideways from his off-road experience with some of the best of them. I mean, he was up against some amazing rally drivers, and we actually won that event the first year that we did it, which I think might still be the only time the Americans won that event. So Jimmie's amazing talent. He really is, and certainly in a stock car, he's probably the best I ever raced against in NASCAR.
Okay. And can I talk to you a little bit about Hendrick now? You haven't been to Mercedes. Toto, if you're listening, when you're next in the UK, I'm sure you'll be welcome there. But can I ask you about Hendricks in terms of they're serial winners? You guys are serial winners. What is it about that team? And can you just tell us a little bit about the scale of it so that people listening to this might be able to compare it to Formula One?
I mean, I would say, there are a few teams within NASCAR that are doing things at a very high level, that you can maybe compare to Formula One organization or factory. Hendrick, we build all of our own engines with support from Chevrolet. We build all of our own chassis. I mean, we basically do everything that a Formula One team would do. We just are under different rules or restrictions and budgets. We don't spend as much, but within NASCAR, Rick Hendrick has created really a dynasty and an organization that is known to hire the best of the best and do everything at the highest level. We'll say the last 3 or 4 years have been rough. It's been not what we're used to. But this year, Hendrick's really turned things around. We recently had the 1, 2, 3, 4 finish, which had never been done in the history of Hendrick, and I think maybe only 1 or 2 other times. And then just won the 269th race of the organization's history, which just became the all-time winningest organization in NASCAR. So, yeah, it's hard to describe what our campus. We call it a campus. We have multiple buildings on the campus where all 4 of our teams are located, and everything that we do. And Rick Hendrick's a car nut, so he has a car collection that he's very proud of. Probably one of the best Corvette collections in the world. And then just this NASCAR team, about we're close to 600 employees, and from marketing to PR, sponsorship, and the building of the engines in the cars, and then prepping these cars to go to the race team, to the racetrack, 38 weeks out of the year. So it's a very special place. It's the only place I ever drove, and now I get to be a part of it, on the business and ownership side.
How important is continuity, particularly with the engineers in NASCAR? Because to go back to Mercedes and even BAR that we were talking about earlier, there are some of the engineers there who have been there since the start of BAR, and they're still there today. They're in very senior positions now, and they love it and they stay. Is that the same at Hendrick?
It is. Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, Rick looks at his car business. He's owns car dealerships and transfers a lot of that over to racing. And he'll tell you anytime you were to talk to him, it's all about the people. And when he finds good people, he wants to move them up in the organization over time. And when you have experience and talent and also, this, as you mentioned, continuity within the organization, then there's been people that are there for many years. Matter of fact, Rick has a tradition in his dealership that he's brought over to Hendrick Motorsports, where if you've worked at Hendrick Motorsports for 20 years or more, then you get a watch. You get a special Rolex watch that he hands out. And I mean, every year there's probably 8 to 10 people that are getting those watches. So it just goes to show you, the loyalty that people have to Hendrick Motorsports, what a great place it is to work. And Rick, he loves people that have been there and contributed for years, and he loves to reward them for that.
And how big is the team in terms of number of people?
Well, so like I said, the organization, the whole campus is close to 600 people. And then, you'll break down, we're under a roster limit right now. As you go to the racetrack, I think we have like 14 or 15 people per team that can go to the racetrack. But each team, you're probably looking at, probably 50 people that right now we've actually changed about 4 or 5 years ago, where it used to be separate buildings, separate teams. Now everything's cars in certain aspects are still being built in other parts of campus, but all of the engineers, the crew chiefs, the cars where they're being set up, the final prep, and all those things to get ready to go to the track are all happening in one building all together. And so it's really like one organization now, where so all the information, all the data, everything's being shared with all 4 of these cars. And this year, it's very clear, it's evident, because all 4 cars not only have won this year, and that means that they'll all 4 be in the playoffs later this year, but they're all 4, very, very competitive among one another and among the whole field.
It's fantastic. Well, Jeff, just to end, let's bring it back to Formula One. 2021, we're speaking, I'm in Baku, Azerbaijan, ahead of this weekend's Grand Prix.
Listen, normally I would say that I'm jealous of whatever amazing city that you're going. You just came from Monaco, and I would say, oh gosh, you're so lucky. I'm going to go to. I won't say, but but this weekend, I get to match you, because I get to go to Sonoma and out to the wine country, which is home for me because I'm from that area, but beautiful part of the United States that we love racing in, and we get to do some road racing through wine country. So I'm not as jealous that you're in Baku right now.
And of course, Sonoma is one of the 2 road courses where Juan Pablo Montoya won in NASCAR.
He did.
Yeah. It's an odd thing.
Say that again.
I was going to, it's an odd thing, Jeff. Just, you grew up in California. As a European looking from the outside in, that's road course. That's road racing territory. It's. Did you ever, as a kid, make the trip down from San Francisco to Long Beach to watch the Grand Prix, for example?
I know, it's so crazy to me that all the racing that I did, I never even went. It was called Sears Point, but Sonoma Raceway now. I never even went there. Maybe drove by it a bunch of times. I don't ever remember stepping foot on the property. Um, the amount of road racing that I did was very minimal in a go-kart. So, there's a few tracks around that area of California, but I didn't go to Sonoma that we raced go-karts in, but I bet I did 8 to 10 road racing go-kart events in my whole career at that point, before I went and started racing sprint cars. So it was just really all about ovals and dirt racing. And so I went to, I think my first IndyCar race may have been Laguna Seca. I went to Laguna Seca. Friend of a friend who we were racing with was racing what they were, called Super Vs, what are now Indy Lights at the time. So we just kind of went there to watch them, and it happened to be the IndyCar race. And so, of course, watch IndyCars, and I loved it. I got to see some of my heroes growing up. But see, even when I say my heroes, it was Indianapolis. It was the Indy 500 that I was more focused on. Again, being an oval, and so AJ Ford and Rick Mears and those types of guys. When I got to Laguna Seca, it was all road racing. So I was like, hey, a beautiful track, cool, but yeah, I'm an oval guy. That's just the way I thought of it. So I've been to Long Beach. I've been to several IndyCar races and things, and I love them as a spectator. But I don't know, it wasn't ever anything that I yearned for. I was really more yearning for the oval experience.
It's fascinating. Well, have a great time over there.
Thank you.
Who do you fancy? It's going to be odd because this is going to come out after the race. So be careful what you say now. But
Okay.
Who do you fancy coming into this one? Who do you think is going to win this weekend?
Woo-wee.
Are you a Max Verstappen fan?
I do like Max, but of course I am. I'm loyal to my boy Lewis, and I think he's phenomenal. What I'll tell you first, what I'll start out with saying is they've been asking for a fight, and I think we finally have one. I thought when we started the season that it looked like Red Bull really found something big, and then they just they weren't able to pull it off, and all of a sudden Mercedes started clicking off these wins, and Lewis in particular. And I was like, wow, maybe we don't have a fight on our hands. And then of course what happened in Monaco. I mean, who'd have thought one race could change the way the championship looks. So I would imagine that's got to give Max a lot of confidence right now. So I don't know. I still think Mercedes has the upper hand. You get away from Monaco. That's such a unique course and track, and now you start getting into the the efficiency of the car and the high speed straights and corners and things like that. But Baku's got some pretty technical stuff too, so it's going to be close. It's hard to say. All I wish for, here's what I wish for. And my family, by the way, is going to disown me for saying this because my wife is Belgian, and our home is very close to Holland, and so they're big Max Verstappen fans. I would like to see this thing come down to the two of them, final race, a real battle, and of course, I'd like to see Lewis and Mercedes win it at the end. But I just I think we all want to see. Anybody that follows Formula One would like to see that because it just hasn't happened. Normally it's you're down at the final race and you've got one driver that has a pretty good lead and just protects and has a smooth race and it's over. It hasn't been a real fight all the way to the end.
Well, here. I think there's no one listening to this who wouldn't agree with you. And Jeff, are we going to see you at COTA later in the year or maybe Miami?
Well, now that COVID restrictions are lifting, I'm fully vaccinated. So, I plan on doing some more traveling. So I would love to. I don't have plans to right now. One of the reasons I was going to those races was through Exalta. Who's also one of the sponsors at Mercedes. So depending on if that's one of the races that they are supporting and want to bring me there for that could dictate what happens there. I got to look at the NASCAR schedule. I don't actually know right now what's on the NASCAR schedule for that same weekend. But if I can make it there, absolutely, I would love to go. It's we were just there with NASCAR. It's a great course, and I've been to it a couple times for Formula One.
And if you don't make it to COTA, what about Miami in 2022? And how big a deal is that on your side of the pond?
It's a big deal. Is it going to move the needle the way Formula One wants it to? I'm not sure. I think that it's a great market for Formula One, and hopefully, they can design a course that's exciting and fun, for the drivers as well as for the spectators. I would love to go. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I have a friend that lives in Miami who recently has become, over the last couple of years, because of his teenage son, has become a big Formula One follower and fan. So I know he's excited, and so hopefully together we can go to that event. Because if there's a new event that's coming like that, I'd love to be a part of it. Like I said, I would like to go there as a fan, but also to learn. If there's something that they're doing for that event. NASCAR's looking at doing some street courses. So, I don't know if that's in the cards for Miami or if that would be some other place. But I think it's always great to see how those events are done. I've been to Singapore and some other F1 races, and it's amazing to see a city taken over like that for such a big event. And I think Miami's not in the city; it's outside the city, but I think it'll go over well.
Jeff, thank you very much for your time. It's been fantastic to speak to you. It really has. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is unique and different for me. I don't get to talk this much F1, and unless it's a guy that used to work for me, John Edwards, that did my PR for many years. He and I both share the Formula One passion. We actually would do a qualifying lineup every weekend and have a little friendly competition. So other than that, you're it. So thank you.
Wasn't that great? I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jeff as much as I did. And I found myself agreeing with so much of what he said. He has that wonderful blend of passion and experience, and he makes a lot of very good points. There were many highlights for me. I loved his description of that Williams test in 2003. His sheer enthusiasm for the FW24 and its capabilities is infectious. And you just know that he'd have been quick had he made the switch to F1 on a permanent basis, be it with Williams in 2004 or with BAR and Jacques Villeneuve a few years earlier. What a pity we never got to witness that. I also found Jeff's passion for qualifying interesting. He enjoys seeing the cars and drivers flat out and on the limit for one lap, when speed is the only thing that matters and drivers aren't worrying about strategy and other compromises in races. I think it's worth bearing in mind what Jeff has to say on this while F1 thinks about its race weekend format going forward. Jeff, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Many thanks for your time, and I hope to see you at a Grand Prix soon. Oh, and if you're listening, Toto, don't forget that Jeff would love to come and visit the factory in Brackley one day. Before we move on, please remember to send in any stories or chance meetings or thoughts that you have on Jeff. He oozes class, doesn't he? And remember, I'll read out the best ones next week. Send them to me at TomClarksonF1 or use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid. Which brings me on to what you sent in about Roberto Moreno after last week's show. And you've been busy. The virtual mailbag is bursting at the seams. His F1 struggles and his brief moment in the sun with Benetton really struck a chord with a lot of people. Tony DeZino got in touch with this. A simply astonishing podcast, he says. I'd always admired Roberto's super sub days in Indy in the late 90s, but it was just remarkable to hear his emotions when telling his F1 stories in such great detail. There were a lot of really powerful lines, weren't there, Tony? You have to love Roberto's passion. And Robert Moss had this to say. I've been listening to your chat with Papa Moreno. I laughed, I cried, I was aghast, I was happy, I was sad. Just wow. Certainly one of your best. Thanks. Well, thanks to you, Robert, for that note. And I was all of those things too. I remember being emotionally drained by the time we'd finished the interview. And how about this from Julien? What an epic episode, he says. I love Roberto and his stories. He's one of the unsung heroes of Formula One, and he would have deserved some real success in good teams. But qualifying that Andrea Moda shitbox in Monaco makes him a true legend of Formula One. Well, Julien, I agree. It was indeed a heroic performance. And we're going to leave it there, although we got literally hundreds of messages about that episode with Roberto. Thanks for your feedback. And even if I haven't read out your message, please know that I have read it. I read each and every one of them. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jeff, and remember to send in your thoughts and stories on him. And as ever, I'll be back next week with another great guest from the world of Formula One. So see you then. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.